It's a great question, and I've had this put to me probably over the course of probably 30 years, particularly, I won't say bar talk, but certainly just open discussions. And the answer is that, you know, for me, my first home I had, when I understood the power of leverage and assuming risk and debt coverage, it was pretty simple for me that one natural person opposed to 3-4 other properties and 3 other tenants contributing 80% of the service requirements to the bank made more sense to me. Because if you're going to accumulate and sign your name up to a house and a mortgage, it's non-deductible debt. So if you've got someone on a limited amount of income and it's the average income and it's an average home and the prospects of that career is fairly limiting, that paying off the mortgage over a course, or if they can top up and pay fortnightly or weekly, sometimes those particular and tuck their money into super, the SGC requirements. That hasn't been a bad model, and it served people well post-war, because most of those people from 1945, the baby boomers, came back, had 3.5 children. No one was talking about leveraging into the stock market, digital currency and borrowing money to buy shares. It was getting shelter and feeding your kids and getting them educated and keeping your job. They were the 3 things. And so the talk about anyone that in 1950 who's going to, I don't want to pay off the mortgage, I'm going to go and buy investment properties, was an outlier. And so it's just because of that generation, and why that happened is because of fear of security and fear of failure post-war. So that sort of got ingrained into, well, mum and dad did it, so, and it worked out okay for them. They paid their mortgage off in 22.5 years. We all went to private school and we did pretty well. That's the average Australian narrative with a lot of people. They might have gone to private school, but they were educated. But what I'm getting at is the average, those people might have accumulated in super $500,000, $600,000 today. So those people now are 75, 80 years of age. The average account balances aren't 1.2, 1.5 million, they're half that. And so if they're going to live 10, 20 years, 30 years past 60, 65, that 90% of their money is in their own home. So, but there was a limited amount of income that they had at the time. It wasn't about going from 60 grand to 300. Someone like me, who was ambitious, single, understood markets, investments, and thought, well, if it all turns upside down, I can start again. But it seems to me the path of buying a home on non-deductible debt for $500,000, opposed to buying one for $300,000 and buying 2 other homes for $500,000 and getting someone else to pay off the debt. If the housing market collapsed, well, then so does the family home. So my view is the family homes aren't immune if you have a property crisis. The family homes aren't immune if you have an interest rate blowout. So most of the complaints that you have today about, or the fear of historical rates, are the baby boomers that were paying 16, 17, 18, 19% on their home loan. I don't hear of many stories in my career, it's 35 years, whatever it is. I don't hear many people that I had 5 investment properties and I was paying 18, 19% because that wasn't happening back then. So for me, it worked out to buy up investment properties because I was going from 50,000 to 100,000 to 500,000 of income. So that came from not only reinforced from my education, but also my accountants. If you don't borrow money and get deductible debt, you're going to pay tax. So I borrowed more money. And what happened is I borrowed more money, got my tax down slightly and got some tax deductions and depreciation. But the following year I had a bigger problem because I had more income coming in. It was just a bigger snowball. But the theory on that is I could wake up one day, cash all my chips in, and I was financially independent at 29. And so that worked for me. So when people say which is the best way, it depends on the individual, and we're all different. That worked for me and it still works for me. Even in this environment, houses are more expensive, but you don't need to buy in Melbourne or Toorak or Brighton. You can go out. The theory, it still works. So but someone who's got a limitation on income, they may not, there's restrictions on that. So, and nothing wrong with actually playing it safe, paying a home off, having some cash in the bank, no debt, and owning a $1 million home and having 500 grand super, nothing wrong with that. That just wasn't for me. What I'm saying now today, people have come to me, and depending again on income, but if you talked about someone that's actually ambitious and their income looks like it's going to run exponential levels, I would say to someone today, and things have changed since the Royal Commission, if you've got an opportunity, there is no utility in paying off principal on the basis that you've actually got capital growth with that facility. So you've either got, I'm saying you've got a service interest. If you can get an interest-only loan on your home loan with the discipline of investing the equity and using that collateral to go and buy investment properties, I'm saying interest only for the ability to be able to, and interest only on the investment property is far better than paying down the principal on your own home. And if you graph that and leverage that, so even if you've got it paid off or partly paid off, having a line of credit that's deductible, and you need to be very careful with that, because I don't want to rip into mortgage brokers or bankers, but you know, I've seen a lot of loans set up and they're incorrectly set up in the eyes of the ATO, and it drives accountants crazy when they say, well, this is not a deductible debt. So if you've got a deductible loan that's in the eyes of the ATO for investment purposes, that's and in this space, now you're talking about this strategy in theory will obliterate superannuation contributions and deductible contributions. Because if you've got a deductible debt on as the home as security, and you've got no interest in paying no desire to pay down the capital principal, it's what that leverage does on the home to be able to use it for investment, whether it be in property or whether it be in global corporations, global companies. And right now you're seeing, it's a good point you bring up about property. Right now, if I said to someone today, well, let's have a race over the next 3, 5, 10 years on $1 million on a portfolio of gold, silver, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Berkshire Hathaway, Nvidia, Google, or a property in Bentley on $1 million portfolio, that the portfolio will obliterate that. In fact, over 10 years, you'll probably find that the property hasn't doubled in a suburban area of Melbourne. It's more like doubling every 14 years, but let's say it has doubled. I'd say the share portfolio would be 3 times that. That's the point. The end game is which one's the best performer. They're both, you get a tax deduction on both, but the own home, the cost of paying down that loan and that race to go and pay down that non-deductible debt, so if I've got no debt, no one can get me, is stinking thinking, because you need to be thinking about, well, I want to be independently financially secure. And because this gets back to emotionally is that the key to success and happiness is freedom. And the secret to freedom is courage. And if you think like that, I got told that when I was about 16, and I thought, wow, to be free, and it comes back down to courage. So that's why I learnt more about instruments rather than playing it safe. You know, so that's my report. Well, the minute Australia comes back down to 30 years on terms, 35 years like the state. I mean, you can borrow. You go to home. If you jump on a plane now, I can take you in, fly you into Texas, Austin, Dallas, Georgia, and you get a deposit for 20% and get your 40-year home loan fixed. 40 years fixed. Interest only or P&I. You can't do that in Australia. So that's the difference. And I think that there's no better or worse, but for me, there was only one way. That being mortgage free sounds good because there's no obligations. But that's assuming that's okay if you're financially independent. That's like saying to me, you're tax office free. Now, if you're tax office free, you're earning no income, no capital gains tax, you actually have very little. If you never need to deal with the ATO ever again, you're actually quite poor and probably need to move to Bali. This mortgage-free nonsense is misrepresented and misunderstood, the term.